Hello, I'm Dr. Jennifer Degler, and welcome to Healthy Relationships RX, where we provide you with powerful prescriptions for successful relationships. We do this in 6 areas. We help you with your marriage, your sex life, your parenting, your relationship with family and friends, your personal growth, and your spiritual growth. And in today's video, we're going to be answering a question from a viewer to help you with your sex life. And she submitted this on our Facebook page. And you can do that as well if you go to Healthy Relationships RX and see Wives with Dr. Jennifer Degler on Facebook, or you can just go to the healthyrelationshipsrx.com website and submit a question there, and maybe we'll answer your question in a future video or a future podcast. So let me just read her question to you. She says, "My husband is so worried about maintaining an erection during sex that it has consumed him, and it just makes it not work even more. I've told him many times that I like having to work for it, and it makes me feel accomplished when I can help him maintain an erection, but he is so upset about it that we could be right in the middle of great sex and it will stop working. What can I do to help my husband just get comfortable and relax?" This is a great question. Erectile difficulties cause men and women a lot of anxiety. And I think it's easy to forget that when it comes to erections, they are like the moon in that they wax and they wane during sex, and they're like the sun. They will rise again. But we can just get so anxious about that and have so many worries that we're not going to be able to maintain an erection, that it's not going to last long enough, that it won't work. And then those thoughts begin to cause performance anxiety. The same thing happens when you're shooting free throws. So you can have this great basketball player who in practice just is nailing those free throws over and over. But then when he gets right up to the time of performing and the crowd is around and it's time to shoot that free throw, all of a sudden he gets lost in his head with worries. Will I be able to make this shot? Is the ball going to go in? Is it going to go well? And then all of a sudden that anxiety takes over and he stops performing very well. The same thing happens with erections. If a man loses touch with how he's feeling in his body, the pleasure that he's feeling, enjoying looking at his wife, just the fun that the two of them are having, and he loses touch with his body and begins to get lost in his brain and have these performance fears, then it can just cause that erection to go away. It's a lot like if you tell somebody, don't think about a white polar bear. Whatever you do, don't think about a white polar bear. Right now, stop thinking about a white polar bear. You're probably thinking about a white polar bear, aren't you? Exactly. So what happens is men will try and tell themselves, okay, don't think about erections. Whatever you do when we're having sex, don't think about your erection. Don't worry about your erection. Just don't think about it. Don't think about it. And so what do you think happens? They end up thinking about it and worrying about it, and then that interferes with them. It's interesting how in the external world, the harder we work to overcome our struggles, the more success that we have. But in the internal world, when it comes to our thoughts and our emotions, the more we struggle against them, the more we have of them. So part of this whole process is not getting so upset if those thoughts do come in your mind when you're having sex, and just kind of letting them float on by rather than fighting. I can't be thinking about this. Stop thinking about this. Stop thinking about this. Because then you're just going to have more and more of those thoughts, and that's going to interfere with your sexual pleasure and your ability to maintain an erection. The same thing happens for women when it comes to orgasm. Many times women will begin to get lost in their head and think all these anxious thoughts. Am I going to be able to orgasm? Does that feel good? Well, I'm not sure. Am I starting to get excited? Well, I can't tell. It's just, we call that spectatoring. And when that happens, you lose touch with your body. You lose touch with those pleasurable sensations, and your body doesn't function as well sexually. And then it becomes a barrier in that oneness that God created sex to be between a husband and a wife. So what's our solution here? I've kind of already given you some clues to that. It has to do with getting back in touch with your body, being in the moment. There's actually a whole technique called Sense8 Focusing that helps people, a sex therapist, use this with couples that are dealing with a variety of sexual challenges to help them get out of their heads and get back in their body. And if you're interested in these techniques, you can get a book called Restoring the Pleasure. It's by Cliff and Joyce Penner. They are kind of the grandfather and grandmother of healthy sexuality in the Christian arena. And they've written several books. I love this book because what they did is they took sex therapy techniques and just turned them into a book. And so you have different chapters. There's a chapter on erectile difficulties. There's a chapter on orgasmic difficulties. There's a chapter on premature ejaculation. And it walks you through, if you were going to meet with a sex therapist, what would the sex therapist teach you how to do, and the techniques that they would have you use, including Sense8 Focusing. So you can get that book and work with that at home as a couple. If you're able to, in your area, to find a sex therapist, that's also a great idea. And you can go to a website, aasect.org, asect.org. That's the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And they have a Find a Therapist in Your Area button that you can click on and see if there's somebody in your area, or maybe even somebody via Skype who could help you and your spouse in this area. Your marriage, your sex life is worth the time and the energy and the money that it takes. So invest some in that. Instead of putting that, instead of getting an update in your car, how about you take some that money and put it towards your sex life instead. Also want to let you know, when we have this idea of reconnecting with your body, we came up with a DARE. One of the things we do here at Healthy Relationships RX is we have the DARE newsletter, and we email out a DARE to help wives initiate a creative sexual encounter with their husband. That's a free newsletter that you can sign up for on our website. We came up with this deck of dares. This is the first 40 dares that we emailed out. And one of them that we came up with is the Trace Sensations Dare. And let me tell you how it works, because this is something you can do at home with your spouse to help you guys get back into just noticing what your body is experiencing. It's really easy. All you do is just go around your house and get some things that have different textures. So for instance, here's a sponge. Now don't get that old nasty sponge that's all stinky sitting on the edge of your sink. Get a new sponge. You might get a feather. Here's the pipe cleaner. Here's a little plastic fork, a Q-tip, a straw. There's all kinds of stuff here. You just walk around your house and find things that have different textures. Then you either blindfold or just have your spouse close their eyes. And then you bring out your little tray of fun. And you just kind of take these little textures and run them across different parts of your spouse's body and see if they can guess, what is that? Is that a Q-tip? Is that a sponge? What is that? But they're focusing on what are they noticing from their senses. And it's a fun way to get you to, first of all, just have fun in the bedroom, but as well to get you back in your body, out of your head, out of the worries and the anxieties, and instead back in your body where you can feel pleasure. And then the last thing I want to address is something that this wife said in her question that it's about boundaries. I want to address this. So she says, I've told him many times that I like having to work for it, and it makes me feel accomplished when I can help him maintain an erection. That's a little check in my head about that, because you are not responsible for your husband maintaining an erection. And we want to be careful as a couple that we don't take on the responsibility for something that's happening in our spouse's body, because you don't have control over what's happening in their body. So we each need to, me as a wife, you as a husband, you as a wife, you need to take responsibility for your own sexual pleasure, and don't own the complete responsibility for your spouse's sexual pleasure. Sometimes I will have women say to me, well, my husband, he just can't give me an orgasm. He just won't give me an orgasm. It makes me so mad. Like like it's his responsibility, sort of like he needed to go to the store and buy you an orgasm and he didn't, and so you're mad at him, when in fact you're responsible for your own pleasure. Yes, we as partners, we have an influence in that. If you're not brushing your teeth for a week or taking a shower for a month, you're not helping matters. You're not going to help your spouse feel more pleasure, and they certainly aren't going to want to be connected with your body if that's what's going on. So we can have an influence, but in terms of really owning sexual pleasure, we need to own that for ourselves and not expect that our spouse is going to make that happen for us. And so that involves communication, which means you have to open up your mouth and talk to your spouse about what you like and what you don't like. And conversations like that often go better when you are not naked in the bed, because it can be uncomfortable and people feel vulnerable when you're trying to give your spouse feedback when you're actually right there in the bed naked, particularly if you're going to tell them, I don't like it when you do that. So instead, how about on a date when you're both fed and you've got some privacy and you're feeling good, then you can say, can we have a discussion about our sex life? And here's what I love about what you do, and here's what I'd love to try. And take ownership of that and speak for yourself. And then be connected with your own body when you are making love with your husband or your wife, to keep bringing yourself back into your own body. What are you seeing with your eyes? What are you smelling? What are you feeling with your fingertips? What are you feeling in your body? And all of those sensations get you out of your head and into your body where sexual pleasure and oneness can happen. So I hope these tips have been helpful for you. Feel free to shoot us a question if you have that, either at Jennifer@healthyrelationshipsrx.com or through our Facebook page, Healthy Relationships RX, and See Wives with Dr. Jennifer Degler. And maybe next time on another video or another podcast, we'll answer your question.